Okay, in this lesson, we are going to talk about solving two-step equations. So instead of just one thing bothering the variable like we did in the last lesson, there will be two different operations bothering it. It says in general, you'll want to start with the one furthest away and then work back towards the variable. Okay, so one thing that I'm going to suggest that you do is when you look at these problems, what I want you to do is identify the thing that is furthest away from the variable. So when I say that, what I mean is on the same side of the equation. So in this case, we have the plus 10. That's the furthest thing away from the variable. Okay, so if I'm going to start to solve this problem, I want to start with that. So if I see plus 10, I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. And when I subtract 10, it just cancels that 10 out. So I bring that 2x down. So I have 2x is equal to 30. And now I have just a one-step equation, and I see multiplication. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I know that x is equal to 15. Okay, so we have a bunch of examples on this page, and I'm just going to go through each one of them. And if you need to stop and pause and take a closer look at something, feel free to do that. Okay, so again, the thing that is furthest away from the variable on the same side is the plus 12. Okay, so I'm going to start with that. So I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. So if I start on the left-hand side, 15 minus 12 is 3. And I'm going to be really careful and make sure I bring down that negative 3x. And then I don't need anything else because the plus 12 and the minus 12 cancel each other out. Okay, so in this case, then I see division on the right-hand side, so I'm going to, or sorry, I see multiplication, so I'm going to divide by a negative 3. And anytime we divide a number by itself, it equals 1, but in this case, we're dividing by a negative number, so our answer is going to be a negative 1. These cancel each other out, so we have x is equal to negative 1. Okay, another one. In this case, we have that x on that right-hand side again, and sometimes we don't like that, but we want to be careful here. The thing that's furthest away from that variable is a 32. And you'll notice it's a positive 32 because there's no sign in front of it other than the equal sign. So if it's positive 32, we want to subtract 32 from both sides. And 15 minus 32, well, that's going to become a negative number, so it's negative 17. And then this one, we want to be really careful. When that 32 cancels out, we want to remember that we have a minus x there. Well, that minus x is going to become a negative x. And that negative x actually has a 1 next to it. So we're going to divide by a negative 1. And remember from last time, when we divide by a negative 1, the negatives cancel each other out. And anything divided by 1 is just itself. So we have 17. And then we have an x on this side. Okay, let's keep going. All right, here we go. We have a little division, and then we have some subtraction. And the thing that is furthest away from the variable in this case is the minus 4. So I'm going to start by adding 4 to both sides. Okay, so when I add 4 to both sides, it cancels on this side. So I have x divided by 6 I'm going to bring down. And then 1 plus 4 is 5. Okay, and then since I see division, I'm going to multiply. And by multiplying here, I'm going to cancel the 6's. So I have x is equal to 30. Okay, let's keep going. Here we have another negative x. Okay, and the furthest thing away from the variable is the minus 12. So I'm going to start there and say plus 12 on both sides. So we cancel out the 12's and we bring down the negative x. And we have 18 on the right-hand side. And this one, we can do one of two things. We can look at that and say, hey, if it's negative x, I can just move that negative sign over to the 18 and call it negative 18. Or we can remember that there's a 1 there, and we divide by a negative 1. And anytime we divide by a negative number, it's a negative, if we divide a positive number by a negative number, the answer is going to be negative. So we have negative 18. Okay, let's keep going. All right, here we have a decimal. So we're getting a decimal involved. So the furthest thing away from the variable is that 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 5 because it's a positive 5. So 20 minus 5 is 15. Those 5's cancel each other out. And so again, really careful, that minus 1.2x becomes a negative 1.2x. And then I'm going to divide by negative 1.2. And in this case, it would not hurt to grab a calculator. So even me, I'm going to grab a calculator just to double check and make sure that I know what 15 divided by negative 1.2 is. So I'm actually going to go to my calculator that we used. And I'm going to divide. Ooh, I've got it set up so it's the big way. So I'm going to do 15 divided by, try this, negative 1.2, and that equals, it says negative 12.5. Okay, oops, we got to add here. So, all right, so if we go back to Notability, it was negative 12.5. So there we go. All right, so there we go. Okay, so just because we had a decimal, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any harder. It just means we need to use the tools that we have to be able to answer that question. Okay, let's see here. Let's keep going. So here we have 31 equals negative 3x plus 4. So the furthest thing away from that variable on that side is that positive 4. So we're going to start by subtracting 4 from both sides. So 31 minus 4 is 27. And then that negative 3x, we're going to bring that down because the 4's cancel each other out. And then we're going to divide both sides by that negative 3. So we end up with 27 divided by negative 3. Well, any positive number divided by a negative number is negative, so I know this is negative 9. And then those 3's cancel each other out, so we have x is negative 9. Okay, here we go. There are a whole bunch of these, so if you want to take a break and pause and go back and look at some, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so here we go. The furthest thing away from the variable is the negative 5, and it's negative 5, so I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So negative 20 plus 5. Now, the really common mistake that people make is they add that 5 to the 20 and make it a negative 25. But if you remember on that number line, we're moving from the negative 20. Here, I'll draw a little number line up here. So if we're at negative 20, we're going to add 5 to it. So that means we're going this way. So that means we're going to be at negative 15. So those 5's cancel each other out, and we have the x over 4. Then I see division, so I'm going to multiply. Put parentheses around that one too. So 4 times negative 15 is negative 60. And those 4's cancel each other out, so we have x equals negative 60. All right, we have another one here with a decimal. Again, don't be afraid of those decimals. Just use the tools that you have to be able to help you answer the problem. All right, so here we go. Minus 6 is the furthest thing away from the variable. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. And just like that last problem, we have a negative number and we're adding 6 to it. So what's really going to happen is that 11 is going to get smaller. It's going to become a 5, negative 5. And then since the 6 cancel each other out, we have 0.2x. And then we're going to divide by 0.2. And again, feel free to use that calculator. We can go back over to the calculator and say, hey, we have -5 divided by, I got to get rid of the add. I can't see things with the add. Just get rid of the add. -5 divided by 0.2 equals -25. All right. So if we go back to Notability, we saw that was -25. So x is -25. All right, how many more do we have? Oh, just 3 more. Ooh, and they involve, whoops, they involve exponents. Oh, I did it again. Here we go. So they have exponents. So we're going to have to remember those exponents that we learned in the last lesson. So here we go. The furthest thing from the variable is that plus 19. So I'm going to subtract 19 from both sides. So I have x squared, those go away, equals 100. And then if you remember, the opposite of a squared term is the square root. So we're going to do the square root of 100. And that is going to be x on the left-hand side and 10 on the right-hand side, because we know that 10 times 10 equals 100. All right, another one. Here, let's get rid of that so we don't have it in our way. Okay, the first thing we notice is the -36 is the furthest thing away from the variable. And that means we're going to add 36 to both sides. Ooh, 45 plus 36. That could be a problem that we need that calculator for, but we can do this maybe in our heads. That's 81. 36's cancel each other out, so we have x squared is equal to 81. And again, that opposite of a squared is a square root. So we have the square root of 81. Well, that's 9 times 9, so we know it's 9. So x is equal to 9. Okay, last one before you get to try a few. The furthest thing from the variable is -12. So we're going to add 12 to both sides. 13 plus 12 is 25. 12's cancel, and we're left with x squared. And again, the opposite of a squared term is square root. And 5 times 5 is 25. So we have 5 is equal to x, or x is equal to 5. Okay, here we go. On the next page, there are 9 problems that you need to do on your own. So what I want you to do is pause the video and do those 9 problems. And when you're done, come on back and finish watching the video. All right, so the last thing that we want to talk about in today's lesson is dealing with fractions. Okay, so if we remember, the number on the top of a fraction is called the numerator. And it means to multiply. And the number on the bottom of a fraction is called the denominator. And it means to divide. Oops, those are not showing up very well. Divide. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go through these 2 examples, and the way I'm going to do this is a little bit different. Okay, so we have 2/3 x, we have 2/3 x equals 40. And if the top number, the 2, is multiplying the x, and the bottom number is dividing the x, we want to do the opposite of both of those things. And we can do them at the same time. So what I want to do is I want to multiply this thing by 3/2. So I'm doing the opposite of both of those things at the same time. So if I do 3/2 on the left-hand side, I'm going to multiply by 3/2 on the right-hand side. So when I do that, The 3 cancels the 3, the 2 cancels the 2, so I'm left with x over here. And then if I write out what is actually happening here, if you remember the top number, the 3 in this case now, is multiplying, and the 2 is dividing, I'm going to have 40 times 3, and then divided by 2. So 40 times 3 is 120, if we work left to right. And then 120 divided by 2 is 60. Okay, so we're multiplying by the top number, then dividing by the bottom number. Okay, let's do another one, just to get a little practice. Now we flip this one around, the variable's on the right-hand side, but that's okay. We can still do the same thing. We're going to multiply by this fraction, and we're going to flip it over. So we have multiplied by 4 over 3. So we're going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, so the 4 cancels the 4, the 3 cancels the 3, so we have x over here. And then we have 4 times 15 divided by 3. And if we go from left to right, 4 times 15 is 60. And 60 divided by 3 is 20. So x is equal to 20. All right, what I want you to do is there are just 2 of these down at the bottom that you need to do on your own. When you are finished with this assignment, what I want you to do is create a PDF and submit it on Schoology so we can grade it for you.